Good afternoon. It's 3 p.m. and I'll call to order the Board of Directors regular meeting study session for Thursday, January 16th, 2025. May I have a roll call, please?
Director Meyerhoffen,
Here.
Director Duff,
Present.
Director Martin,
Present.
Vice President Griffith,
Present.
President Sewell.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. Seeing that all 5 directors are present, we'll skip item 3. We'll also skip item 4. We'll do that on Tuesday. Item 5, rules of procedure, Counselor?
Yes, according to the rules of procedure adopted by the Board of Directors, all noticed meetings are conducted using Rosenberg's Rules of Order as a procedural guideline. Directors should refrain from responding directly to public comments at meetings of the board. The president of the board presides at all meetings and decides all points of order and procedure during meetings. The president is responsible for the maintenance of order and decorum at all board meetings. No person should be allowed to speak who has not first been recognized by the president. All questions and remarks should be addressed to the president as the presiding officer. No member of the board should speak more than once upon any one subject until every other member of the board wishing to speak on the subject shall have been given an opportunity to speak. No board member shall interfere with the orderly progress of a board meeting.
Thank you. Item 6, public input. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on matters within the board's jurisdiction. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less. State law prohibits the board from discussing or taking action on any item not listed on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to address the board today?
President Sewell, not online.
Okay. Seeing none in person, we'll move on. Item 7, employee recognition, human resources report will be on Tuesday.
Correct.
And we're actually going to rearrange our agenda slightly. We're going to do action items 8 and 9 and then break into closed session and then come back and finish the agenda. So item 8 is resolution 2025-01 MSWD Regional Water Reclamation Facility Installation Purchase Agreement Extension. Action will be taken today. Staff recommendation is to adopt resolution number 2025-01, extending the installation purchase agreement related to MSWD Regional Water Reclamation Facility for 1 year through January 2026. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell, members of the board. Resolution in front of you, just an agreement summary. Back in 2023, the Board of Directors adopted Resolution 2302, which approved an installment purchase agreement or a line of credit with Wells Fargo in the amount of $15 million. Really, this agreement was set up to help us with cash flow. We were getting ready to start the Nancy Wright facility. We knew that some of the turnaround of some of the reimbursements from the state could take as long of 9 months, maybe even 6 months. But the issue was we also weren't getting the funding agreements taken care of on a timely basis. So we knew when we looked at our cash and what we had in medium or short-term investments, we may have to liquidate those. If we did, we'd have to do that at a loss. We'd hope that the deadline that we gave ourselves would give us enough time to complete this project as well as the others. However, due to various construction delays, the conveyance line and the treatment plant have been delayed, and we haven't started the M2 plant. We haven't got the FBA yet for the M2, and we've just recently got the FBA for the conveyance line, and we haven't been reimbursed for that. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but the action today is a 1-year extension to take us through January 2026. In reality, this has been fantastic for the district. We have used it. We had a better rate, and we have people on the line that can take care of this, but it's going to be 4.5% as we look forward to finalizing the final rate on Tuesday. This is a construction budget tracking sheet that was sort of requested as part of our workshop yesterday, but I'll show this today just to talk about why we are still asking for this, even though we're farther along in the project and we've already gotten $40 million from the state. At our last board meeting in December, it was presented that we had 53.3 million in reserves, 23 of that in midterm investments, 7.1 in short-term, 20 million in cash. Typically, Arturo likes to have $10 million of cash flow. So you're looking at maybe $10 million that we can extend ourselves, if you will. Knowing that we have potentially $20 million, you see what's highlighted there. Those are the funds that we would be requesting or would be waiting on in the next 12 months. We could possibly, if delayed, not necessarily run out of cash, but we'd have to dip into some of our other reserves, short-term or long-term. So going with the same thought process that Arturo had a couple years ago, and rightfully so, this is one of the belt and suspenders approach to finance, if you will, to get this. When we did this before, the rates lowered and we had a better return on our investment. We hope that that happens again. They're talking about reducing rates this time. So I'm sorry, last time the rates went up after we signed in, so it got a better investment. We hope this time they go down, which may hurt us a little bit, but if you have any questions, there'll be people on the line to talk about that. Staff recommendation is to have this resolution adopted, extending the installment agreement until the end of, or excuse me, to the end of next year or the beginning of next year. There are people on the line. One, our bond counsel, Brian Forbath, as well as John Self from Wells Fargo. Let me go take it off screen. Brian, would you like to say a couple of words and talk about what your review found? And how you negotiated this?
Thank you, Brian, and good afternoon, members of the board. Brian did a very good job in summarizing this. This is really just a 1-year extension of the existing facilities. All of the terms of the existing installment purchase agreement, which is the loan, remain the same. The only thing that's changing here is just the rate. That rate will, as Brian mentioned, get reset on Tuesday of next week, and you're approving this document with a not to exceed interest rate of 4.5%, which Wells Fargo has assured us that it won't be in excess of that. So I think Brian did an excellent job in sort of describing the process here before us. The plan would be to, assuming you all decide to move forward with this afternoon, would be to execute all the documents and get this thing closed, because the existing loan matures. The $15 million is due and payable to Wells Fargo on next Friday. So the plan is to get everything signed up early next week and have this extension close essentially simultaneously on the closing date of the termination of the existing loan. And with that, I'm more than happy to answer any other questions. But I think, again, Brian did an excellent job explaining the facts here.
Do we have any questions from the board, Director Duff?
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. Just a quick question. In the presentation, there were a few mentions to 4.16, and then there were mentions to not to exceed 4.5. Can you explain why we have the increase from the initial 4.16?
So the resolution before you, the loan is going to be set based on market conditions on Tuesday of next week. And so we don't have a fixed rate at the moment in terms of what that rate will be. Your existing loan was at 3.99%. And so I think the 4.16 was what Wells Fargo had initially, based on rates that were quoted at the time that the district received a term sheet. That's what the rate would have been at that point in time. But because the rate has not been set, we wanted to provide a little bit of flexibility in case the market moves and rates go higher, so that you can still execute this loan and not have to pay Wells Fargo $15 million on Friday. But I think the goal here is to hopefully, and I know Brian and his team at the district will be working with Wells Fargo to achieve the best market rate that we can on Tuesday.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. I do have one clarification though, because I went back and looked at our original agreement for the original IPA, and I had in the staff notes from our website agenda notes that it was 4.5% then. And you're saying it's 3.99. It was 3.99. Was the 4.5 a not to exceed then? Because I was under the impression.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
The
in a sense,
actual-
we're
the
not
actual
changing the
loan-
not to exceed.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
The actual loan that was executed was at a 3.99%.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate your clarification there. And then just my final question or request to clarify, the $20,000 is the closing costs in a sense, correct?
Yeah. So essentially there's, legal fees for the bank counsel, and then there's fees and costs associated with our review. We have to give a brand new tax exempt opinion and provide all the closing documents and all the work associated with negotiating and drafting all the documents associated with it. So all in between the bank and straddling, it's roughly $20,000.
Okay. And so I think that is all I had. Just double checking my notes. I apologize. Yep, that's all my questions for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice President? Director Martin?
No.
Director Meyerhoffen?
Yes, this loan was originally, as we all know, was for the Nancy Wright treatment plant. And we've already completed the construction on that. So now we're moving this loan over, and I'd like to hear from the bank, Brian here, the banker, as to exactly what it is the bank is making this 15 million new loan. It's actually a new loan, you're redoing it. So what is this $15 million going to be used for by the district?
So just to clarify, I'm not the banker. I'm your guy's lawyer. I'm your bond counsel on it. I'm not the banker. But so this loan is essentially all we're doing here is extending the term and the new interest rate that's reflected with the loan, but none of the other substantive terms change with it. And so I think the best way to think about this loan was it was really always intended to be an interim financing, sort of like a liquidity bridge for the district in order to provide sufficient liquidity while you're waiting for state Water Resource Control Board reimbursements. We've obviously had a lot of that issues with many clients where the state is very slow to reimburse. And so, I haven't been involved in the internal discussions, but I'm assuming Brian and his team at the district has determined that, I think as they mentioned, that there's still a need for this liquidity to stay in place. And from their view, they deem it to be cost effective to keep it in place. But none of the credit terms are changing, and what it's really being borrowed for is the same liquidity for the alarm project.
What you're saying is we'll be able to use this $15 million wherever the district feels it's needed?
For capital projects, for these capital projects,
Capital
that I've
projects.
identified. Yeah. Not, it can't be used for, salaries and benefits or anything like that.
Right.
It's
This
a
is
tax
capital
exempt,
projects.
project. Yeah.
Okay, just, I wasn't really for the loan in the beginning because we didn't need the money. And now to take out another loan at a higher interest rate when we don't know where it's going to be used in the future, we're just paying interest on a loan that we may not need right now. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Right. And I have nothing further. Thank you for the presentation, Brian. With that, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on item 8?
President Sewell, we do not.
Okay. And unless there's anything further from the board? Yes. Do we have a motion for the item?
So moved.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Director Meyerhoffen,
No.
Director Duff,
Aye.
Director Martin,
Yes.
Vice President Griffith,
Aye.
President Sewell.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 9, Federal Advocacy Services, Carpy and Clay Incorporated. It is recommended to authorize the interim general manager, to execute an agreement for services with Carpy and Clay Government Relations in the amount of $5,000 per month for the term February 1st, 2025 to January 31st, 2026. And just to clarify, we're not taking action today. We're just, okay. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, President Sewell, and good afternoon, members of the board. Laura Morgan Kessler, principal at Capri and Clay, has more than 20 years of experience advocating for public agencies on a wide range of issues, including infrastructure and water quality. Through her Capri and Clay experience, she served as the district's Washington representative for the past 6 years. Prior to that, she assisted Thane Young for approximately 12 years serving MSWD. Through these combined efforts, the district's groundwater quality protection program has received significant federal funding as well as a planning authorization at the Water Resources Department Act of 2000 and a construction authorization for $35 million through the 2007 WARDA. Due to Laura's direct involvement with legislators and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, the project has recently received $1.2 million in fiscal year 2018 from USACE Work Plan, $250,000 in fiscal year 2022 Energy and Water Appropriations Bill, 800,000 fiscal year 2023 Energy and Water Appropriations Bill, and 2.7 million in the Senate fiscal year 2024 Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. I also would like to note that her contract this year remained the same price. She did not escalate the price and change. Laura's here today on Zoom to give you a brief update on the status of things in Washington, D.C. and to answer any questions you may have. Laura?
Thanks so much, Mary, and good afternoon, directors. As always, I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you and provide you with an overview that both looks back at the past year in Washington, as well as a preview of what's in store for this coming year. So the second session of the 118th Congress was really heavily focused on appropriations bills. In fact, it took Congress the first 3 months of 2024 to finalize those bills. Thanks to the hard work and continued advocacy of the board, as well as your staff, the final bills included, as Marian alluded to, $2.7 million for the district's septic to sewer conversion project with the Army Corps of Engineers. This funding represents the largest single-year award for the project. In addition to the district's efforts related to federal funding, the district also took several positions on pieces of legislation that would have had an impact either on your operations or your customers. So 2 examples of those bills that the district supported over the past year was the Water Conservation Tax Parity Act. This would allow water conservation rebates to be treated as tax exempt, as well as the Low Income Household Water Assistance Program Establishment Act. So this would reauthorize the LIWAP program, for which the district has been very successful in helping your customers qualify in the past. As you all know, the outcome of the November election has resulted in a shift in political power here in Washington, D.C. So Republicans are now in the majority in both the House and the Senate, with President-elect Trump being sworn in on Monday. They will have the White House as well. So the last time Republicans were in control of sort of all 3 of those pieces was in the 115th Congress from January of 2017 to January 2019. I do want to point out that while Republicans are in the majority in both the House and the Senate, their margins for the majorities are rather tight. So in the Senate, Republicans hold 53 seats to Democrats' 47. In order to pass any legislation outside of a budget reconciliation package or political appointee confirmations, 60 votes are needed in the Senate to overcome a filibuster. In the House, Republicans hold 220 seats to Democrats' 215. However, for the next few months, 3 Republican seats will be vacant due to resignations, 2 of which are members who are leaving the House to go serve in President-elect Trump's administration. During this period of time, Republicans will have 217 seats. So this means that if all Democrats vote together, Speaker Johnson cannot lose a single Republican vote in order for a bill to pass the House, as unlike the Senate, the House does not have a tiebreaker option. So as you've probably seen in the news, things are in full swing here. The 119th Congress was officially sworn in on Friday, January the 3rd. The House's first order of business was to elect a new speaker, and unlike the start of the previous Congress, this year the speaker election was handled in about an hour and on the first vote. As anticipated, Mike Johnson was reelected to serve as the Speaker of the House. For the district, you have a new member of your congressional delegation. Senator Schiff now joins Senator Padilla in representing California in the Senate. He will be moving into the office previously occupied by Senators Boxer and Harris on the first floor of the Hart Senate Office Building. The Senate has also recently finalized committee assignments for the new Congress. So there will be no changes in the committee assignments for Senator Padilla. He will continue to serve on both the Environment and Public Works Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Army Corps of Engineers and the Environmental Protection Agency, as well as serving on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which has jurisdiction over the Bureau of Reclamation. Senator Schiff is going to be joining Senator Padilla on the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, as well as joining the Senate Agriculture Committee. Prior to the holidays, Congress passed yet another short-term continuing resolution to allow the federal government to remain open and funded through March 14th. This new CR gives Congress some more time to hopefully finish and finalize these FY25 appropriations bills. So turning to the administration, on Monday, President-elect Donald Trump will be sworn into office at 12:01 p.m. One of the first items on his new administration's to-do list will be working to fill the more than 4,000 political appointee positions across the federal agencies. Currently, the president has nominated former New York Congressman Lee Zeldin to serve as the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency and current North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum to serve as the secretary of the Department of the Interior. Both Burgum and Zeldin had their committee hearings today. I expect that both of them are going to move through the confirmation process very quickly and could be confirmed by the full Senate as early as next week. I'm also anticipating that once President-elect Trump has sworn into office, that his new administration is going to be releasing a significant number of executive orders next week. This is something similar that we saw his administration do during his first term. I will obviously be keeping an eye on these and will keep your staff updated as to any executive orders that come out over the coming weeks that may have an impact here on the district. So to wrap up, as always, I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with this update and to work on your behalf here in Washington, D.C., and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions or comments from the board, Director Martin?
No.
Director Meyer-Hoffman?
Yes, it's a shame we have to worry about Democrats and Republicans when we're just trying to get money to serve our customers. I would like to say thank you for the way that you've laid this all out in our agenda here. You got it all broken down, who's going to get paid how much and what company you're going to use to pay, to give the money to. And I think that's really, I really appreciate that. And we need to have more contracts come before us in the manner in which you brought it. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Duff?
Thank you, Laura. And thank you for your update. Really appreciate it. I think you're going to be working very hard for us, so you may regret being kind to us this year in the contract, and we really appreciate it again. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Vice President?
Hello. Thank you for the information. I know you got a tough haul ahead of you, so I'm looking forward to a fun year.
Likewise.
And just thank you, Laura, for all the work you do. We really appreciate it as a board, and I think our customers see your work firsthand when we get those grant funds and things coming in. So thank you very much.
My
Do we have
pleasure.
any members of the public wishing to speak on item 8?
President Sewell, we do not.
Okay. And with that, we are actually going to go into closed session. And that item is item 25, Public Employee Performance Review pursuant to Government Code 54957, titled General Manager. Closed session, council. We just reconvened from closed session. Counselor, can you report out, please?
Yes, the board met in closed session, item number 25, Public Employee Performance Review, titled General Manager. There was no reportable action taken.
Thank you. And back to action items. Item 10, Resolution 2025-02, 2025-03, and 2025-04, revised fiscal year 2024-25 operating and capital budget, appropriations limit, and classification and compensation plan. It is recommended that resolutions 2025-02, 03, and 04 be adopted related to the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2025, and revised operating and capital budget, appropriations limit, and classification plan. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell, members of the board. As you know, typically our Director of Finance would give this presentation, but unfortunately he's not available, so I will be giving it today. Working with staff to try to clean up where we left off back in December. You've seen this slide before. You actually saw it on Tuesday. Nothing changed here. Budget summary, there have been no changes to the revenue projections. The total expenses increase was $9.4 million roughly. Operating expenses, which includes one new full-time employee and administrative assistant. As we talked about on Tuesday, we'll be bringing in the course of the next couple of months, probably a sort of a reorg in operations and maybe an extra body in operations, just to help out with Danny and some of the other regulating things that we're working on. Wastewater cost increases, permitting cost, temporary staff, maintenance items, consulting services, and then capital improvements. Most of these are increases in existing budgets. For example, D3, 8018, water and sewer construction. That is it's construction. We had design in there, but we wanted to add construction, as we talked about a little bit, and how we're going to pay for that. Well rehabs related to Chrome 6, monitoring well enhancements, IDE and connection design, solar facility, and then other design and Hillary repairs. Focusing first on the revenue, no increases, but as we talked about during the workshop, we have seen an increase about 10% in the first half of the year in water use, but we still felt that it was not necessary to change any revenue increases or increase those, for the simple fact that it's simply a hot summer, and that was caused the increase in water use. The reason we felt it was an increase is because we saw a marginal increase in the wastewater flow at Horton, so we felt that it was all irrigation. Also, some of the expenditures that we have in the capital are related to grant funding. We know those are going to be expenses that we'll probably take on maybe in the next couple of months, but unfortunately the grant funding hasn't been brought to your attention, hasn't been passed by resolution, some of the BOR stuff, especially in FEMA. But once we get that information and bring that to you, we'll then do the necessary augmentations from that perspective and changes in the budget. Operating expenses, again, talking about a full-time employee in this particular budget, you'll see just over 52,000. That is for administrative assistant, for human resources, finance, and general administration. That's 4 months of a loaded salary, both salary and benefits, wastewater increases, permitting costs, temporary staff, specifically a CPO and a plant operator, and then maintenance costs related to manhole maintenance, and then $10,000 for other things that unexpectedly broke in the first 6 months, and we just wanted to replenish our replacement costs. And then, of course, consulting services, $78,000 for MWN. That's Mike Nesser, who also presented on at the workshop for water management services related to budget and payroll preparation. This is a new slide. We didn't have this ready, but what this does, it compares the revised budget to the actual budget, which you passed back in June. As you can see, there's slight increases in some of these things, customer service, because things are split across those accounts. You see increases in treatment costs. Those are some of the costs that you see there. I'm not sure why some of these other numbers, unless there's embedded percentages that are broken off for anybody that we put in administration. You also see the administration cost allocated changed as well. So obviously there's a cell in there that splits anybody in an admin position throughout some of those different operating expenses. But in reality, it's one person, $53,000. But I just wanted to show you that this was really the difference between the two. And if you look at the bottom, it's close to the 353, but unfortunately I just couldn't get all the cells to do what I wanted to, and I didn't want to change too much without Arturo being around. So I tried to make the best of it so you could see what the differences were and where they were accounted for. But as we talked about, there's no increase in revenue, and we also talked about if you removed some of the depreciation and other things and added back in the non-operating revenue, we still have a positive cash flow in the calendar year or in the fiscal year. Capital improvements, specifically, you're looking at 8018, D3, adding construction, both the sewer and the water. As we've talked about, it depends on what we get from a bid document perspective. The project isn't out for bidding right now, so depending on what prices come in for the sewer, how much do we do of that particular project? We'll have change orders coming up later, asking at this time $2 million, but we're reviewing to make sure that that number is accurate. Well rehabs coming out of the capital improvement fund right now would be 28 and 30. Those are rehab of 2 existing wells. And then we're also adding to well 34, which is currently up and operational from a development perspective. That is developer driven. Monitoring well enhancements. We're looking at replacement of the Horton well, which is well monitoring number 1, and rehabbing of 11. So it's 150,000 out of the capital fund. The interconnect design, that is completely grant funded. This is something that we received back in December for $386.99. That is completely grant funded. Unfortunately, Kurt, I realized after we had lunch today that your project did not make this list. I apologize. Kurt, we're going to be at some point, depending when we get the funding, we'll be starting a cybersecurity grant for $248,000 that Kurt secured for us, and that will pay for a lot of our cybersecurity. So at some point, we'll be adding that to this capital improvement budget. Going down the list, solar, adding $355,000 to that project. That will handle the CEQA documentation that we're going to start working on after the Tom Dotson contract is approved coming up, as well as helping us with the inspection if they do start before we get to the calendar or fiscal year. And then, of course, some extra design work in J2, areas A and J, A and I, as well as areas A and G. Hillary repairs, it's a net increase of 0. We're actually moving money from one to two others. Just so what that looks like, again, having the slides put together, you see the $2 million is the first highlighted. That's for the regional plant. As I said, that may change between now and Tuesday. And going down this list, if you go to number, there it is. I just saw it. 19th, number 64, 19th and 20th Avenue and Little Morongo roadway project. So this is just for the engineering. It is in here, but the construction is not. Once we get the construction numbers, it will be added to this number. I know we've talked about $2 million as a budget cost, but it is not in the budget as a construction cost yet. But I know that was a question that came up on Tuesday. And then you'll see the highlighted, we're removing the 110 and 150. And then there is the minus. The reason those are larger than what we're talking about as far as this particular effort is because this is actually the project that were proposed back in June. We're just adding to those numbers. And then you see the new projects at the bottom, the well rehabs, the benchmark survey, replacement of the monitoring wells, and of course the sewer and water construction related to D3. So that is the capital budget. That concludes our report. Is there any questions?
Thank you. And I know we were able to accomplish quite a bit on Tuesday at the workshop. Robert, you weren't able to make it. Did you want to go first with any questions or? Okay. Director Duff, any questions?
And I didn't see this screen up, the original budget and revised budget you'd given us on Tuesday. This part here,
Yes, we can bring that up if you'd like.
you don't have to bring it
Okay.
up, but I have a question.
Okay.
Under the groundwater replenishment fees, line 30 on that page,
Mhm.
it said that we had, I believe, negative 164,000 in the budget on both of those right here. Okay, because then when we looked at your general manager report, we just paid 546,000.
Correct.
I'm just trying to understand those expense line items and how they fit in or what happened there.
We will find the coding and find out what that is, because obviously we've missed that 2 years in a row because we are paying groundwater replenishment to DWA. So I will look into that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It just confused me for a minute. And then the only other and I guess I just kind of want to reiterate, when we're talking capital budget, these are always estimates.
Correct.
They're always estimates because until we actually go to bid the project. With that being said, could we maybe by Tuesday get that paving estimate put in?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then the other question. Nope, you answered that one for me on Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Director Martin, questions or comments?
No.
Director Meyer-Hoppus?
I just have one question. The critical service center is a capital improvement project, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And do we have that anywhere that I can't find?
We do. Can you bring that
Line
slide?
44
944.
of the
Yeah.
admin building.
Oh, now we got, it's an admin building now.
I think
When I read that, I thought we were talking about this building. We've been for 2 years, critical service center. Now we changed the name to. What's going on here, General Manager Macy?
We will clean that up so the title is consistent across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's the only line item. I believe it's $31 million. 33 million. Yeah, that's the only item that's $33 million. So yes.
And are we hoping that that $15 million from Wells Fargo may help us out on this project?
That is going to be a board discussion that we'll probably have as we're going through the long range financial plan. So we know exactly how to use the resources that we have, both our capital reserves and our any bonding capacity that we may have.
And are we at the present time looking for grant money or whatever kind of money
Always,
we can get for
always,
that?
always looking for grant.
Oh,
money,
yeah, I
yes.
realize that, yes. Nothing solid yet?
Not particularly for that, but that's one of the reasons why looking at it as a critical services center, because it will have all our data and that will be our hub for most of our communications. That's why we'll feel that we hopefully will get some type of emergency response monies for the parts of that building.
All right, and we did have to return the 100,000 for the landscaping because
We are working with the state to see if we can repurpose that for something else related to conservation efforts.
okay,
That's correct.
I like that conservation effort.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I have nothing further. Just thank you to all of our staff for all the work that goes into this. Item 11, appointments to board standing committees. President Sewell may appoint members to the district standing committees. And these will be, well, this and the next item, the affiliations will be approved on Tuesday and we can discuss further. But as far as item 11, standing committees, I was going to leave them the same as this year, unless anyone is opposed to that. The standing committees. So I believe your public relations and any discussion on those?
It won't do me any good. Go ahead.
Okay.
Do whatever you want.
We'll move on to item 12, affiliation listing. It is recommended that the current board affiliation listing be reviewed, updated, and approved if necessary. Only a couple minor changes I was seeing on this. I'll have a printed one for you on Tuesday. Really just a few minor changes. I only received comments from 2 board members, but we can discuss on Tuesday when I provide the list. Any questions or comments now? All right. Item 13, acceptance of bill of sale for Skyborn Village 3, Phase 2, water and sewer infrastructure. It is recommended that the general manager be approved to execute the bill of sale for the water and sewer infrastructure for the Skyborn Village 3, track number 32030-3, Phase 2 project located on East Park Walk Lane, Mooncrest Drive, High Wing Street, Inspiration Drive, Sky Vista Drive, Star Loft Circle, North Star Lane and Rainbow Lane west of Karen Avenue, north of Promenade Drive in the city of Desert Hot Springs as contributed assets. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell. Our engineering manager, Eric Weck, will be giving this presentation. Eric?
Thank you, General Manager Macy. Good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. Item 13 of the agenda pertains to the acceptance of a bill of sale for Skyborn Village 3, Phase 2 development for water and sewer infrastructure. Service and background. Typically, developers are conditioned by the district to construct water and sewer improvements to provide service for their developments, and that's for either for residential, commercial, and industrial developments. So in this case, the Skyborn development was conditioned to, apologies, there we go, was conditioned to construct water and sewer improvements. These improvements have been constructed in the Village 3 Phase 2 area and have been inspected and have been found that they meet the district standards. And if you look at your exhibit that's shown up on the screen here, it's everything that's within the black polygon. So staff will recommend that the board accept the improvements and direct staff to have them incorporated into the district's water and sewer system. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Director Martin? Director
No.
Myhoven? Director Duff?
Thank you for all your work here. Was it our staff or a subcontractor that did the inspections?
It was a sub-consultant, MWH Consulting.
Okay. And just to make sure, just because we have some city issues that they don't make sure properties have met all of the district standards before accepting them. You've made sure that every one of these access points, or our consultant was able to acknowledge that they inspected every access point, or was it they inspected just one area? How does that happen? How does the inspection take place?
I'm unsure what you mean by access points.
Well, there's 1 through 10 listed here of different, I can't tell if these are structures or inside the polygon?
Well, they show the parcels and they show a real rough footprint of the house. And our inspector is really responsible. Our inspector is responsible for water and sewer.
So I guess I'm just trying to, in looking at the picture, they inspected all of the property we're assuming as our property, not just a review of plans, like they went and physically looked at what was built?
They're on site.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to get at. They did an on-site physical inspection. Thank you very, very much.
Vice President?
No.
And I have nothing further. Thank you, Eric.
Before, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but the colors are based on phases and then the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and are those going to be the process that they take down the lots for sale?
That I'm not sure about. I do know that they colored it with the various colors. That was for Skyborn's benefit, and they gave us this map that we were able to use and just show what section of their development for Village 3 that they were completing.
Okay.
Thank you. Item 14, contract amendment number 1 with Tom Dotson and Associates for on-call environmental consulting for the Mission Springs Water District Solar Project. It is recommended to authorize the general manager to approve contract amendment number 1 with Tom Dotson and Associates in the amount of $54,000 for the preparation of necessary CEQA studies, biological surveys, and model for the solar improvement project with a 10% contingency in the amount of $5,400 for a not to exceed contract total amount of $134,400. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell. Members of the board, Eric Weck, our engineering manager, will be giving this presentation.
Thank you, General Manager Macy. Good afternoon, President Sewell, members of the board. Item 14 of the agenda pertains to a contract amendment with Tom Dotson and Associates, which is one of our on-call consultants that specializes in environmental aspects like CEQA, biological compliance, and for our improvement projects. So currently, Tom Dodson and Associates has an on-call contract with the district for $75,000. It's in a not to exceed amount. So the district desires to use Tom Dodson and Associates to have them complete necessary environmental CEQA compliance for the district's upcoming solar improvement project. There are various tasks that include the preparation of categorical exemptions, biological surveys, cultural resource reporting, air quality analysis, and ultimately securing a notice of determination for the project, which will clear the way for construction of the solar improvements. There are 7 sites within the district, and you can see them here on your slide, that new solar improvements will be placed at. The fee for Tom Dodson and Associates, per their proposal that you should have in your packet, to complete this task is $59,400, which includes a 10% contingency. And staff expects that this work performed by Tom Dodson and Associates to be completed by the late fall of 2025. Are there any questions?
Director Duff? Oh, I can. Director Meyer?
It seems to me like these well sites should have already had environmental studies on them. I know some of our well sites were built way before CEQA even came into play, and what was it, 1999, I think CEQA came in. So, where are we really needing a consultant at?
Well, I believe Tom Dodson and Associates did a records research, and they determined, and we also determined that fresh environmental analysis would be needed for these sites.
Yeah, that makes sense, a fresh one, sure.
Let me go.
Costly to get it done, but it makes sense.
There is a flow chart you have to go through anytime you're disturbing land, size of land, has it been disturbed before, things. It's a flow chart actually, and we feel that the well sites, because they have been worked on before and disturbed, will probably get categorically exempt and not have to go through a full vetting process. But the regional site and the Horton, we feel that that disturbance is going to cause enough that it's going to have to go through a more intense process.
Thank you.
Director Duff?
Thank you for your presentation, Eric. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, trying to digest my questions here. Okay. The original contract for 75,000 was for what purpose? What was the on-call purpose of that contract?
They help us out for when we receive environmental documents, say from the city of Palm Springs for their developments. Frankly, I'm not capable, and it's probably better that I don't even review and provide comments on them. So that's why we retain Tom Dodson and Associates to help us out with that.
And so that 75,000 would be for any of those that come in, correct?
Yes, it's separate from the 59.
And they were asked obviously to review this particular project. Correct.
Yes.
And so they've come up with what needs to be done as their on-call service for this contract. And now they're saying they need a contract for 59,400. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is where I have a problem repeatedly. I do not like, and I know this may be just a personal opinion, but I do not like calling amendments to things that are new contracts. And I know that there may be reasons, but it does not seem to make sense to me. And I don't know if there's a legal reason why we cannot do this, or if there is this is costing so many man hours, it's unreasonable. I just am trying to understand why we couldn't have just had a contract for Todd Dobson for 59,400 for specifically the solar consulting contract.
I think, go ahead, sir.
I know this has been a question before, and we tried to address that in the way we did the amendment. Because usually in this, we just say a contract amendment to the on-call professional services. In this particular, when we actually led with the title, the Solar CEQA Compliance First Amendment to the on-call. That way we have all the insurance and all the information that we already had, and it's an on-call service, but we led with this being a true specific project with that in the title. So it still keeps all the on-call services contract, all the terms, all the conditions and all those. We don't have to do that a second time. But that's why we do it, and we tie it to that from our procurement process because we went out to bid for these services. I don't know exactly when, but
About a year or two ago.
Okay.
So to stay with that original procurement, that's why we do it on the on-call service, because we do have various other things that we do. And yes, we heard what you were saying, and that's why we changed, it does say Amendment 2, but the first thing that's led with is the solar project CEQA compliance, and then the specific quote that is in here is specific. It matches up, because before, you're absolutely right, we would simply just add to that, and then it was confusing because some of the use of the on-call services were then muddied with an amount of amendment that wouldn't match the original. So in this particular case, we tried to line them up with the amendment. So if someone asked, what was that amendment for? It matched up with the proposal on that specific task.
Okay.
So we're trying to get there. So if this doesn't,
Thinking about this.
so
So I think that here's the problem that still remains for me as what is still confusing when we do it this way. I have no idea by a glance how much is left on this contractor's contract for on-call, that what they were originally contracted for. I see that we have, 134.4 is the future cost and 26,341 is the current fiscal year cost, but it's not saying which is remaining for the original on-call. And then obviously this is for 59.4. I needed to get that out. Please digest whatever we need to do to meet on some sort of common terms. I'm willing to do. Thank you.
we do track cost in such a manner. What we need to do is put that cost sheet in here so you can see what it is. And then when it changes title and goes into a second amendment or a third amendment. So we do have that as an internal tracking. We will start including it in this document.
I hate to add more papers to our 980 some page. So maybe another line in the box or
Not,
something like that.
I'll
I don't know.
look at the box as well, but the nice that your request is not creating any additional work for us because it's something we already do. It's just an extra page in your agenda. So that's why we're trying to modify what we do to incorporate your ideas and your thoughts. So we do get you that information. And I know when you start talking about the tracking of the cost, we do that so we can provide that.
Vice President? Thank you, Eric. See. Item 15, board acceptance of a contract change order with J.F. Shea for the construction of the Nancy Wright Regional Wastewater Reclamation Facility. It is recommended to authorize the general manager to execute a contract change order with J.F. Shea Construction Incorporated for additional costs due to unforeseen tasks and field issues during construction of the Nancy Wright Regional Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $1,698,569 and augment the capital project budget $2 million. General Manager?
Thank you, President Sewell, members of the board. Eric Weck, our engineering manager, will give this report as well as TKE is in the audience to answer any questions regarding the construction administration of the contract. Eric?
Thank you, General Manager Macy, and good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. Item 15 of the agenda pertains to the contract change order with J.F. Shea, which is the prime contractor responsible for the construction of the Nancy Wright Regional Wastewater Reclamation Facility. On October 21st, 2021, J.F. Shea was awarded the contract to construct the new regional wastewater reclamation facility. The contract was originally in the amount of $40,986,000 and was determined to be the lowest responsive bidder and was in good standing with the California Department of Consumer Affairs and Contractors Licensing Board. Construction began in earnest during the summer of 2022, and since that time, the regional plant has been under construction and is substantially complete with minor work remaining. During the course of construction, there were several issues that arose that increased the scope of work as well as having to respond to field issues and timeline impacts and design revisions. Most notably, impacts from burrowing owls limited the contractor from free movement on the site, and they had to adjust their work areas according to not impact the burrowing owls and their nesting areas. Let's see. Secondly, delays due to SCE revisions to the design and where the plant can connect power for electrical service, and also delays in the completion of the conveyance line played a part as well. And I'll come back to these slides. Impacts to the project scope were also driven by additional work directives and additional SCE design revisions that contributed to project delays. And finally, with high winds and numerous weather delays, it impacted work progress by the contractor not be able to perform their work safely. To conclude, over the past several months, the district staff and the project team have studied the change orders and the items and have recently met to negotiate the costs. After negotiations with the contractor, various change order items were reduced to a total price of $1.698 million. So as of right now, are there any questions? Because we can go ahead and answer them. I have TKE here as well to provide any further detail. Once we're done with that, I believe General Manager Macy has some slides further on.
Before we open it up
Go
to any
ahead.
questions, let's go through these slides because I know some of the
Right.
board has asked the question about some specific items. Let's go to the first one. The first question we received from the board, and we sort of talked about this at the workshop, was grant reconciliation, because I know we'd shown this, at least the left part of this slide, multiple times where we had a $2 million adjustment on the first request. And then the amount approved was 20. And the question was, when you go down that adjustment, did we lose $2.2 million? And as Mike Nesser talked about during the meeting on Tuesday, the answer is no. It was then asked for in the second request, and we started moving forward. So when you see the adjustment on the left, it's not necessarily consistent to what was actually had to be resubmitted or got turned down. As far as what has been rejected, out of the 40, we've received almost $44 million. What has been rejected due to a lot of markups And by markups, I mean that it was more than just any type of markup. I believe the state will reject. And it basically, of all those rejections, it came to $13,000. So everything that we have applied for except for $13,000 to date, and that goes through request number 6, we've gotten other than the 13,000. We saw this slide before. I know, Vice President Griffith, you haven't seen this, so I know it's a little bit new to you, but in reality, we were just trying to show exactly how much has been rejected and we won't be covered by the grant. So it's a pretty low percentage when you look at $44 million, but specifically to you, if you have any questions with that, we can, or we can come.
The right,
The,
right column.
the $12,000. Yes.
So when you say in here that this is reimbursable from the state of California, when you say that when you've already got.
Vice President, can you please use your mic?
Yeah, sorry. You want me to repeat that?
I heard it, but
Okay,
for the
so,
tape.
so on this page, you're talking about this change order, it says is reimbursable through the state of California grant.
Which,
It's in the analysis.
oh,
Right
I'm
before
sorry.
you talk about avoiding litigation,
So-
and I've got 12,947.
I was just talking about this table, I guess, per se, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, but what this speaks to that is we have 12,947 here that is not reimbursable, which is kind of a small amount. But in this statement, it says that this amount of 1,698,569 is reimbursable through the state of California. Can you guarantee that?
I believe Mike Nesser answered that question and he said that all the markups have been removed from future requests.
Okay.
So I believe, at least that's the way I understood it. Everybody's shaking their head. So he asked that.
I just
That was a
wanna-
question that was asked on Tuesday. Good question.
I see that we have these cost proposals to change order, okay, from July, and
Okay,
nothing was sent back.
let me go through a couple
Okay.
more slides. Next slide, please. The question, and you saw this in the budget presentation, how much is the grant actually going to cover and where are we with the total grant cost? So you see here, you see phase 1, you see phase 2, you see phase 3, and then you see the construction subtotals. These total costs on the left are sort of lined up with what the budget agreement was, as well as amendment number 2, where there was some money shifted around. From that perspective, you see with the change order pending for Shea, which is the item we're talking about now, the item for TKE, which will be the next item, and then several other pending change orders, and then totaling everything up at the bottom, it comes to 68,587 and change. The grant amount is 66,627. So from that perspective, right now, with everything that we have, known cost, known possible cost, we still have $40,000 left in the grant. So that was a question that was brought up at the workshop. I just wanted to get through that. So when we're talking about the future cost being part of this, it does fit within the existing cost based on the information we know right now. Let's go to the next slide because it was another question that I want to get to. The question is, I think we skipped the slide. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, here. The question is how do we confirm, because there was a change order 80, there was a question about what is a weather day? How did we verify that? So what happens is when there is a weather day, the contractor sends a letter similar to this. This is a weather day that we had in January. Next slide, please. And these are the inspection reports. This is only page 1 of the inspection reports. Some of these are 5 pages, some of them are more, but you'll see in the first, this is the day before. You'll see 8 hours on several of these. They worked the entire day because they tracked exactly who was out there on the site. Then the second is the day of the weather delay, the 23rd. You'll see that all the numbers say 4 on them. They worked a half day before the wind knocked them out, I believe is what this is showing. And then the day after, you see 8 hours again. So that's sort of what, when the change order talks about documentation and pictures, I didn't include the pictures, but if we scroll through here, there's pictures as well. But I just want to at least show that this was the documentation that they were referencing that change order. Can we go to the next slide? This is something that I forgot about. We had a PM air particulate day at the end of July. This is the letter that we received. Next slide, please. And this is the inspection report for the day before, which was, I believe it looks like it's a Thursday. no, I'm sorry, it must have been a Friday, because then on the 31st is when we had the AQMD. They didn't work at all, and it actually, the weather shows that it's a haze. And then the next day, they actually worked another 8-hour day. So I know the question was, what were we actually using to verify this, and what did the inspection team actually write down? Again, this is just the first page of these, but when we started looking at how much information was given to us, I think it was a 17 meg directory, and it was a lot of stuff to go through. And I was just trying to find out, to give examples of what we are. So that's how we verified some of the information that they're asking for from the contractor's perspective. So now we can get into the actual numbers, if you will.
Since we're on weather, is there an anemometer on site? Okay, and a rain gauge? Okay, because when I looked at the daily rainfall from Riverside County, some of the dates for rain don't add up. At what point do we stop work in terms of rainfall?
Steve Ledbetter from TKE.
Thank you, Director Griffith, for the question. We usually leave that up to the contractor.
Okay.
It's up to him if he wants to stay on site and continue with work that may not be affected by the rain, but he usually would submit a letter if it impacted the critical path schedule. For a certain period of time, they were flying panels for the building, let's say. So they weren't able to operate the crane on high wind days or heavy rain days, but once the building was up, if it was rainy, they could do work inside the building and still get something accomplished for the day.
So just to give you an idea, there's a day, let's see, in 2023. On 3/21, they show there's rain, but according to the Garnet weather station, there was no rain. So one of my issues is that when I'm looking at these records, I'm wondering, what did they do that day? Like, did a sprinkle come down and they stop, or what? And then the other question is, what is the wind at which they stop? Sustained 25.
Yes, sustained 25.
Okay. And unfortunately, you're here, they're not. So you're going to have to deal with me.
That's okay. But regarding the rain, it's what's happening on site. That's why they have the barometer or whatnot on site, and they have a rain gauge on site. And we had joked about it throughout the course of construction that we'd be looking around and see rain up, along Pearson and maybe Palm, but we're over here without any rain happening on site.
Yeah. So that's why I'm curious if right around the corner, there's nothing, but there's a rain delay. Some of the wind days, first one they have 4/14/22, the wind at Garnet, okay, less than 10 miles an hour until 3 p.m. Then it was an average of 15 gusts to 30. Another day, nothing over 8 miles per hour. The other was 6 miles per hour. And these are all listed as wind delays. And so if you're saying it's 25 and over, I'm going to question the veracity of the documentation that I'm getting from the organization. Understand?
But again, they were using an on-site weather gauge. So it may not match the Garnet weather gauge.
But you know where Garnet is, right? It's right down the street.
Yeah.
It's not in Palm Springs. It's not up here. So I'm going to question it, because I don't know that. Yeah, it's always breezy up here, but I really don't know that there was that many delays. So that's just.
And some of those days, again, it was typically when they had to do crane activities that they claimed the weather or a wind-related weather delay because it affected the operation of the tall, heavy crane. And
have they worked in this area before?
I can't confirm if they have or not.
Okay.
But to your point, we specifically had a pre-bid meeting with the contractors in the field, so they were very much aware of the surrounding wind factor.
Okay.
And it was quite a windy day when we went out there with the contractor.
Okay, because I mean, like, there is tons of stuff on theirs that I have questions for, and I know you can't answer it, but it goes to accuracy and facts, and so let's talk about the burrowing out, because it's a big deal. Here's what they say: the nesting bird survey per MMRP section 4.5-3 is a standalone requirement that does not apply directly to the burrowing owl, as this section is intended to monitor for raptors and migratory birds with no correlation to burrowing owls. Okay, So the definition of a raptor is a bird of prey with sharp talons and keen eyesight, which includes most owls. The burrowing owl is the only raptor species to live underground. So when you get a letter from a company that basically says BS, all right, I have to wonder, what else don't they know?
We were never in agreement with them on their retort about the burrowing owl not being a
Again, I'm not
correct
blaming
species that
you.
was covered.
I'm just,
Yeah.
they're not here, so I just need to go on record with this thing. Who does the scheduling for this project?
The contractor provides monthly schedules.
Okay,
And they also provide 3-week look aheads in the weekly meetings.
and do you know if they've ever worked in the desert before?
I can't confirm if they have or have not.
Okay,
They're I believe they work in multiple jurisdictions.
so anybody that works in the desert knows about the burrowing owl, especially if you've done construction. So in terms of the delays for the burrowing owl, they should know the nesting season and that you can't disturb them during the nesting and breeding season. So I kind of find it interesting that not only do they say that the owl is not a raptor and this law doesn't apply to them, is the fact that they did not take that into consideration when doing the scheduling. So that's just one of my concerns. This project is an exemplary model for construction project working relationship, and we commend all personnel involved. There's BS. The site security system allowance did not provide any details related to the scope or magnitude of the potential work. And then later on, I saw that according to this, in the plans, there was no specific security. Who would be responsible for that failure?
I don't know that it was a failure. Typically, when we're still going through the process and we don't necessarily know what we want during the bidding time, especially on something like this, we do what's called an allowance, and we put an allowance in there. So what we did is we put an allowance in there. What we had done from the time this project was being designed and being built versus when we actually decided what we wanted to do, first of all, technology changes quickly. We upgraded a lot of things. We tested out a lot of different cameras. We added cameras. And then we also wanted to make sure that this would also mesh with what we were thinking of doing at the CSC at our new administrative building. So the district specified a different security system than was first envisioned at the time of the bidding, knowing that that was 2 years after the bid? Approximately.
Yes.
So in that 2-year period, we went from not talking about a building at all to one in design, and we just wanted to make sure that they were more compatible.
Okay. I know it seems kind of crazy to me that you would have plans and build a giant facility and not have any details, even the most basic.
We did have there's key locks and things like that. The typical things that you would do in trying to fortify a facility, fencing, locks.
Says.
I'm sorry?
That's not what this says.
No,
The fence, automated gate opening, door locks, those were all included, but camera systems, that was the what was in the allowance.
Okay. I mean, it states, did not provide any details. So I don't think that I would take a job that didn't have details. Let's see. Address this. The decanter conflicts. Why, who did the design?
AECom Technical Services did the design.
And so this says that there was a conflict between the decanter mooring post and the 8-inch ALP piping in all 4 basins. At what point should that have been discovered? It was discovered during installation, but shouldn't that?
Sorry, Director Griffith, on some of these issues, you get information from the vendor about their decanter in this instance, and you have a feeling for how it actually mounts. but not everything is done in exact 3D and takes into account footings and everything else that comes into play. So it's not until it arrives on site and they go to install it that they realize there's some kind of conflict with either access to it, the embedments to it, that they're right on top of, another pipeline that they need to shift it. So some of this is just part of what happens when it moves from design into construction.
Okay. And this is kind of to us. Cost proposal submitted in April, and then we don't get final approval till September. That's 5 months. That's kind of a long time, isn't it? There's 4/25/23 cost proposal submitted by JFS, 9/14/23 MSD final approval of cost. Does it typically take?
Is that still the security?
No, I'm beyond security. I'm on the Cantor conflicts.
Oh, okay. I don't know anything about the decanter.
Grading revisions, 3 different proposals. No explanation why. I'm just a little concerned that there's all these things in here that don't make sense to me. I'm not in construction, but I certainly don't do things without planning. And the issue with the burrowing owl and the delays by that really could have been fixed had people actually done or known their job. So I'm really kind of having a bit of a difficult time on that. And that's kind of all I have for JFShay right now. So I'll let you rest.
Go ahead.
I too was surprised that we had a burn owl problem. I figured that would have been all done in the original environmental study before they broke ground. On the issue of the wind, Vice President Griffith, I worked out there on those original windmills when they were built, and if you're going down the freeway, sometimes you'll notice some of the windmills are on, and other times they're not, because of the way that the wind currents are out there. So whatever was being recorded in Garnett on the other side of the freeway is more of a protected area as opposed to where the Nancy Wright Treatment Center is. It's way out in the open. So the wind could have had a different speed and could have delayed those projects that they were working on those days. As far as the rain goes, can't tell you anything about the rain. That's all. Thank you.
So if I may add a clarification or maybe some helpful information as it relates to the burrowing owl in regard to Director Griffith and Director Meyerhoffen's comments. Before the start of construction, the biologists went out and they do a pre-construction bird survey, see if there's anything on site. Throughout the entire 60-acre site on April or March of 21, nothing was found. But the contractor doesn't clear and grub the entire area at that time. He had only done the footprint in which they were working. By the time they were gearing up to do the clearing and grubbing for the spreading pond area where the burrowing owl was found, was done at a later date, and there was an owl that was actually found in that area that we had to work around. So that's, a little bit of what happens. They're not always on site, and this project had a two-plus year duration. So again, at the beginning, there weren't owls. So it was business as usual, but then an owl came on site and we had to, mobilize and, work around it, if you will.
So if I made the mistake is that you had a 60-acre site that you were going to build on, and you didn't do the proper study for the burrowing owl prior
The
to
proper
that.
study was done and there were no owls on site at the beginning of the construction. The contractor elected not to clear and grub every area because then he would have been responsible for providing dust suppression and also
Right.
maintaining that area throughout the course of construction.
I don't have a problem with that.
I get that, but my point is, if you are a contractor in the desert, then you know that if you have any of that kind of work, you want to do it in the fall, when your restrictions are less than in the spring.
We agree with you. We, as the representatives for Mission Springs in late 21, was it 21 or 22? Late 22 actually recommended that they go out and proceed with the spreading pond work outside of nesting season. They elected not to and started in March, and lo and behold, during nesting season, there was a nesting owl.
So you're basically validating what I'm saying is,
We share your concerns, but there was those impacts lasted beyond nesting season because we had to go get an MMRP with the state. We had to go through all the steps to actually relocate, do an active relocation for that burrowing owl.
Again, had they followed your advice, though, those delays may not have been like that.
In hindsight, we should have issued a directive, but when we issue directives like that, we take responsibility of the entire cost of some unknown cost. Because they would have, honestly, they would have come back, or at least in my opinion, they would have come back with, well, that wasn't on our critical path. You made us move workforces over to now do this. So we're going to charge you because I lost a production over here because you made my crews move over to this area. So it's a balance, but we tried to navigate it.
So we're screwed either way.
It's not a perfect system.
Okay.
I believe the term was when we were going through the mitigation or the mediation here in this building, in this room actually, was that the burrowing owl was truly at risk for only the owner and not the contractor. Because it's something that the contractor could not control. We couldn't control it either, but it was our land and there was no real reference because the requirements had changed as well. And then there were extra things that we had to take account for in moving that. So the fact of the matter is it was completely on our risk. Whether there's 0 there, it's good. But if there's any number of there is a risk.
It's always been a raptor.
It was a very expensive owl. Was it just one or was it multiple?
It was nesting on site in pond number 1, the furthest westerly pond. And then after nesting season, it was just one of them stayed around. Along the conveyance line pipeline, there were 6 or 7 nests. 3 actual active nests, but 7 potential nesting sites along Little Morongo Road in Dillon.
That's conservation.
I'm not sure who I'm on. Does anyone have any other? Director Duff?
You might want to come back up, Steve, just because you have a hot seat to sit in and because JFSHA is not here to hear me. So I actually have concerns regarding some of the markup and G and A markup that JFSHA had on all of their invoice letters to us. First of all, do you know what the G and A markup stands for? Because they didn't give any definitions on their invoices, so I don't know what they mean by G and A.
The markup is in accordance with the specifications and it's detailed in the specifications.
Okay, so
the markups they applied were allowed for in the project specifications.
Okay, so they had, for example, I can pull one up on page 249. Hold on, sorry. This was not easy because I saved paper and didn't print, so I have to go back and forth here. On 257, it showed that there was a regular markup between 5 and 10%, and it was different for labor than it was for supplies or products, right? But then below that was a second line that said G and A markup. So, and then it was just a flat 5.5% on top of the already added 5 or 10% that they already marked up. So I'm just trying to understand what the G and A.
That's their general and administrative markup.
And the other markup was what, for some reason, our contract allowed them to mark up all of their subcontract.
So I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but they usually have a markup for labor that covers the, fringe benefits and whatnot for their labor workforce. But the G&A covers their office time, their staff time, their invoicing time, everyone back at the home office.
Okay.
It typically covers that. And yes, it is a markup on top of a markup.
Okay. Because what I also noticed in looking at the proof up was that their subcontractors charged them markups for the subcontractors that they charged, and sometimes that was 10%. So what I'm seeing, and I'm my big concern, so in just the letters that were presented here, I added up $344,000 in the markup fees alone. And I know that negotiations were made on each of those letters, and there was no way for me to tell what the new markups were for the renegotiated agreed terms. But for example, we paid, as a subcontractor submitted, we paid $18,000 for Baker Electric's foreman truck that was for 218 and a half days that we had to pay a subcontractor for their foreman's truck at $2,500 a month. And I'm sure that included gas, but I'd like to know, one, that was more days than weather and delay days altogether that we agreed to. So why are we paying for 218 days of his vehicle when that isn't what we ended up agreeing to in the negotiations? I don't know if his was specifically negotiated or if it was taken from somewhere else. It's hard to tell. But I have issues with that in that it's one thing for them to mark up to us, but to pass along any agreement they made with subcontractors that we are not privy to, I'm not okay with, especially when the state, who they knew was reimbursing them, wasn't going to pay for any of them. None of the markups are going to get paid by then. So the other part of my concern then is when we say in the staff report that all of the costs that are being asked for are going to be fully covered by the grant, if these $300 and almost $50,000 of markup costs are truly still in these change orders, then no, we're right off the bat not going to get reimbursed by the grant for $344,000.
The markups that were not included in the grant was markups on ODCs from the construction management side of things. So we have AECom on for engineering support during construction. They were marking up their mileage and some of their meals, and that was a large portion of the 13,000 that got thrown out. They aren't throwing out markups on the contractor stuff because it was allowed for in the specifications, which the state approved. So all these markups on construction are allowed, and the contractor is taking advantage of them, obviously, but they are allowed per the specifications, and the state approved those. So those are eligible costs, and they have not thrown out those markups.
I would like to see the markups revised to match what was negotiated that we were actually going to reimburse for, though. We're paying full markups on negotiated invoices that we negotiated for a lesser amount. So I'd like to see, like, okay, we negotiated on one contract, I'm forgetting what it was in front of me, but it was, let's say, let me find one for you. Give me just a second to find the letter here. I know, I really miss my book so bad and my little flags. Sorry, Dory, but you're gonna have to print for me next time. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second, guys. I'm trying to not make this more complicated than it needs to be. And a plethora of information was provided, which I appreciate, because like Director Griffith, I was having a very difficult time buying into their line items and how they listed it. And so the proof up helped, but in some cases it kind of made me angry, like the foreman's truck for 218 days. Okay, so when MSWD sat at the negotiation with you and JF Shea, and you guys were all sitting there together, each of these change orders were reduced from what they originally asked for. But what they originally asked for had that markup, right? I want to see that the markups were reduced to match what we agreed to pay for.
The markups were reduced as part of the negotiation process. If we provide, I don't know if it's part of the board packet. I think we just gave you I thought we gave both. If we compare the original July change order request with the negotiated response in November, December, you will see a reduction on time, duration, and markups accordingly.
So like, for example, where we had the wind and weather delays, and we negotiated that, okay, no, we're not going to accept, and I don't remember the exact number because I can't find the page in front of me, but let's say it was 70, and we said, no, including the 15 days, we're only going to accept 41. Well, did that markup get reduced to the 41 days, or are we still paying the markup for the full days they asked?
The markup got reduced to the lower amount.
Okay, will there be any way there that we can see some sort of a reconciliation between the negotiated and what those changes? Because we only saw the original and then the letter that went back that this is the flat line item, and I don't want more of the paper like each line, but I'd like to see some sort of a consolidated for each change order that was originally this. It was reduced to this, and here's what the reduced markup cost was.
I think we can put that together and bring it back to the board on Tuesday.
That would help me a great deal. And I'm just trying to grasp this, and I know contracts allow for a lot of this. It explains like I was saying earlier, sarcastically, it explains the $7,000 government toilets, right? It's just kind of astronomical, but in the future, I'm hoping council can help staff when we do contracts like this that we know are going to be state and federally reimbursed. Can we ensure that there's language that prohibits any reimbursement by the district to the contractor for things that the state we know won't pay for? Like mileage above the state and federal guidelines and meal per diems, and like, is there a way that that can be put into our terms, or that we can make sure?
We can negotiate that. We can request it. And any contract requires a meeting of the minds and an agreement by both sides, two willing parties. So we could request it and
See what happens.
and push back on that sort of thing when we enter into the contract.
I appreciate any look we can do to try and minimize these 30% add-on costs to things and when we see the final end. Thank you for that, and thank you for hearing me. That's it.
Thank you. Director Meyer.
I'm sorry, I'm not buying into this Burley now thing. We have 15 different endangered species here. And when they do the original environmental study on the property, it should have been mentioned then that the mating season wasn't in time. My experience, and I actually had to look this up to see if the burrowing owl actually would burrow down into flat ground, because my experience out here, and even with talking with the fish and game people that have come out here, is that they'll go into the side of a cliff, a small little one, even in the marsh area. And I've actually witnessed them sitting there before things got out of hand here in town. We used to be able to see these burrowing owls when you walk down the water. So you're saying to me that you had 7 potential sites, nesting sites for them. And you found another 3 different sites for the burrowing in that one location, which, so I'd like to see some photos. I'd like to see what their original study was on how they found the burrowing owl, and a breakdown in the cost, because when we look at another agenda item here, they have a breakdown in the cost, and it really doesn't come out to $200,000. So I would like to see the breakdown in the cost, what we're being charged for in this burrowing owl, and whatever information you can give me.
If I could, you actually have to walk the site to find the burrow. They're about this big.
You mean you can't do it from satellite or
No,
on my
no.
phone? I have to
No,
actually get out there and walk.
You actually have to walk the entire.
And the biologists were at times doing daily inspections, on-site inspections, walkthroughs to confirm if the presence of the burrowing owl was there. And as it relates to the conveyance line portion of the project, the burrowing owls nests were, 50 yards off the roadway. So they would be out there actively monitoring the owl, making sure that the construction activity 50 yards away was not disturbing them. There was no signs of stress. They are required by the state, once they found the burrowing owl, the biologists were, to document this. So we have, a significant amount of specific biological inspection reports that document the owl's activity, document the owl's health, and any changes that occurred throughout the duration of the project. We also, the environmental subconsultant also prepared a burrowing owl mitigation report and strategy that specifically tracked the burrowing owl presence and data from February of 23 through January of 24. So all that data is available, and we can share that.
Thank you. When you're walking the site, they're looking for signs of all 15 of these different endangered species when they walk the site. And it would seem to me somebody that understood what was going on here with this, with the environmental study originally and the endangered species, that they might find something on the roadway or somewhere else. So I'm not really sure that I don't have the confidence that I need to really go along with it right now. So that information you can send me, I'll go over it and look at it. Thank you. It's so funny down.
Anything further, Director Martin?
No.
I missed one question.
Yep.
So sorry.
JFJ provided their own 24-hour security for on-site. And he was primarily there during non-working hours. He would come in the late afternoon and stay through the morning before the crews came back out on site. I will have to look into that.
Exhibit A or Exhibit B, they're charging $2,000 and think at 180, no, 2,306 man hours at $180 and 45 cents an hour. Approximately 90 days.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Director Duff.
Oh, so sorry, so sorry. About 90 days of site security by Baker Electric submitted to JFSHA as a subcontractor that of course was then marked up by 10%. And I'm just trying to understand if JFSHA already included the site security, which we saw on an earlier change order, why would Baker Electric be providing additional site security? Or was it something different?
So the daily monitoring of the site is one aspect, and that was provided by JFSHA. What Baker's referring to is the actual site security system, which was being installed. So it was the different components of that system, and it wasn't all packaged up into just one change order. So Baker is a subcontractor to JFSHA, and Baker was responsible for providing, procuring, and installing the security system.
Okay.
So when in that regard, when Baker's talking about site security, it's not for them to have a person out there, with the flashlight and a walkie-talkie. It was for them to actually, procure the equipment and install the equipment for the regional plant site security system.
Can someone just peek at the proof of they submitted? Because it was a bill for a security subcontractor.
We'll look at that.
So if we could just make sure, maybe that was just submitted by mistake. I don't know, but I was just trying to understand why there's so many different site security issues. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And I think I have a better understanding sometimes of how we're hoping the state could act more quickly. And then you go through all these documents and a lot of information. I really appreciate it. I do appreciate the negotiations that we were able to get it down a significant amount. So thank you for you guys' work. Moving on to item 16. Board acceptance of a contract amendment with TKE Engineering for the Regional Water Reclamation Program. It is recommended to authorize the general manager to execute a contract amendment with TKE Engineering Incorporated for additional costs due to unforeseen tasks and field issues during construction of the Regional Water Reclamation Program in the amount of $1,229,576.91. General Manager.
Thank you, President Sewell, members of the board. Eric Wecker, Engineering Manager, will give this presentation.
Thank you, General Manager Macy. Good afternoon, President Sewell and members of the board. Item 16 of this agenda pertains to a contract amendment with TKE Engineering, which actively performed construction management and inspection services for the construction of the Nancy Wright Regional Wastewater Reclamation Facility. Initially, when TKE was awarded the CMN inspection contract in 2021, their initial cost proposal was negotiated down from $7.12 million to $3.67 million, with the understanding from the general manager that the future budget adjustment may be necessary as the project progressed and neared completion. Now, please note, the allowable soft costs that are reimbursable by the state grant is $5.376 million for construction support services. The request contract amendment with TKE will increase their existing contract amount to $4.9 million, leaving an unused balance of $475,000 in reimbursement that's allowable from the state. So during the construction phase, several issues came up that necessitated TKE to address and were out of their original scope of work for CM and inspection services. Most notable, and what we've been talking about, were monitoring efforts for burrowing owls. That included site surveys and developing a mitigation monitoring reporting plan as required by Fish and Game that impacted the construction of the infiltration basins for the new regional plant. Another item that was not in TKE's original scope of work was the oversight and inspection services for 3 monitoring wells that the Department of Water Resources required the district to construct, which was not originally in the scope of work to construct as part of the regional plant. Nevertheless, the district asked TKE to provide construction oversight for those monitoring wells that will monitoring changes in groundwater quality. As part of the agenda item packet, the board was provided a detailed description of these other legitimate out-of-scope costs that were not included in their initial scope of work with backup documents and invoices. And this document is dated November 14th, 2024, and it has backup documents as well as invoices. In this slide here, we wanted to split it out and show you what were the items that TKE completed to date. And then the bottom portion shows contract time additions for future work to close out the regional water plant, as well as the conveyance line. Conveyance line is going through some work now. They're constructing the conveyance line in the SCE easement, and that got cleared up. So they're currently working there now, as well as allowing for TKE to provide construction management and inspection services for the area M2 septic to sewer project. Are there any questions?
Any questions, Director Martin? No. Director Marioffin? Director Duff?
It's kind of quick. It's the same thing. I just curious, in the little packet here where it says up to 770 staff hours were as outlined in the proposal, originally included 770 staff hours for this item, the burrowing owl, and we exceeded it, but the little page you gave us showed you it's only showing 105 hours. And that was on page, I don't know if you have the same giant book as me, but page 410.
Okay.
It's the TKE invoice tracking sheet 2022 to 24 summary.
Those were TKE hours related to the burrowing owl. What I failed to include was Ultra Systems total hours.
That's what I was looking at.
And that's where I used their hours, and that I may have been confusing there, but the 770 is what Ultra Systems initially planned to allocate towards biological monitoring for all 3 project sites.
Okay. That's why I was like, it just seems there's like something's missing there. Okay, that's it.
Director Duff?
All right. Just a couple definitions maybe to start. Expense total. What does that stand for on your invoices? What makes up your expense total? Would that be your gas and like reimbursables?
Other direct charges, yes.
Okay. And then sometimes your expense totals are added to the project total and sometimes they are not. Is there a reason why maybe sometimes you don't and sometimes you do pass those forward, or would you have been excluding some of them?
On our invoice, we only put in the expense total ODCs directly related to TKE. ODC's other direct costs or expenses for the sub-consultants are they're put into the actual task, because we just put that in with the actual task amount.
Okay. Just give me 1 second here. And Geocon, what did they do for us?
Geocon was the soils testing company.
Okay.
So anything geotechnical related, soils testing, monitoring paving, compaction, slump test for concrete. Oh, and special inspection for welding.
So-
Our inspectors were able to cover special inspection for concrete, but we didn't have that, so GeoCon provided those services.
So that was the work they did January and February of last year, was the welding inspections and such, or
Yeah, there was welding kind of throughout.
$42,000 in January and February of 24. Okay,
No, I think on the change order, that GeoCon amount is related to the paving.
maybe.
So
Okay,
the paving limits were significantly increased by the city of Desert Hot Springs, and then that required quite a bit more testing throughout that duration by the geotechnical engineer.
okay. And then the overhead direct costs, those are again only TKE costs, not your subcontractors' costs.
The subcontractors, the ODCs are on their invoice, and then ours in the expense total would be our
Okay.
ODCs.
Okay. One more second. I'm trying to get up to the invoice. There it is. Yeah, so fee total, then expense total, then project total, and then there's like a direct expenses total that's added after the labor subtotal of the whole item. So like, for example, you had on invoice, let's see, for 3201 construction, like that was one of the dates on there. That's not a date. That's like, it's your line item. But it was invoice 2024 196. This is just an example. And I was just trying to understand better what that expense total, because it's the same. So the expense total and the direct expenses subtotal are the same numbers on this particular invoice. And so those are your TKE expenses, not the subcontract.
May I get the agenda packet number so I can go to that and confirm?
Online, it's item 16, page 730. Let's see, the gray line, yeah, 730. Just trying to make sure I'm understanding. Yours was a lot easier to decipher than JFSH's, but you have less subcontractors, I think, but.
Yes, on that invoice, the expense total is the same as the direct expense total on both lines. It's
Okay.
not doubled, it's the same.
The same, and it's just carried over that way. But again, that didn't include the expenses that were submitted to you by your subcontractors.
Correct. Any of the subs, they got rolled into the actual fee total.
That's what I thought. Okay. Those were the clarification questions I had for you, sir. Thank you.
Director Myhoff?
Sorry, I just found here where it says burrowing owl. You have 13 different people working on this. And it says how many hours? 0 hours. But you have over here what the staff rate was. It just doesn't make sense how you would have, how come you'd have 13 different people working on it?
These tables back here were just including every staff person there was billing on for that month. And then we only brought over the costs that were related to the burrowing owl with that staff person. So that was just so that we had consistency from every month and over the 2.5 year schedule timeline that you could see each month that, not everyone was working on it. It was only an hour here or there from our staff. The actual sub-consultant, they have their own line item in those tables.
I see here that one for 3 hours, Shelby Kelly is the only one that you're showing here where it's been green as to how many hours.
So that's just to show in 2022 that we only had, for the entire year, we only had 3 hours as it related to the burrowing owl. It wasn't until 2023 that we had the actual active nest on site that it really.
So then what are all these other charges here with the other people that I'm seeing?
There's no charges. That the hour is 0 and that we're just including the staff rate. And again, that's just to show consistency on the 2022 green table, the 2023 green table, and the 2024. So that when you're flipping through, it was just, again, consistent.
So on that table, you have 3 hours for $145. Okay, thank you.
Anything further?
Thanks for putting up with me for taking the heat for JFK.
Not a problem. We're here to answer questions, whatever you need.
And I had just maybe a quick question more for staff. I'd mentioned I'd appreciated how TKE and our staff was able to negotiate for JFK's contract to come down. Did we negotiate with TKE on this contract?
Yes, at length.
Sounds good.
What discount did you give us?
Sorry about that.
Uh-oh.
Are we back?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. I think that's all we have for the item. Thank you very much, Steve.
That was classic.
Moving on to discussion items. Item 17, Critical Services Center Administrative Building Update.
We're going to do that on Monday.
Tuesday.
Excuse me, Tuesday.
Will that be the same for item 18, Groundwater Protection Program?
I
update?
think we've talked at length about that program today. I don't think there's any update to give.
Okay.
Other than the fact that we are starting construction going down Little Morongo along the SCE easement. February 10th.
We can't hear you.
February 10th was the answer to the question.
But to clarify, we are able to accept customers that do not require the conveyance line to connect, correct?
Correct. The plant is up and operational with the configuration that is down there currently. We cannot get anything coming from north of 18th and 19th, but we could pick up stuff coming down 19th if that sewer was public and able to tie into our system.
Perfect. Thank
So
you.
we have what, one customer?
No, they have.
We would have, there are several, we have several water customers in that area that are connected to a private sewer. Once that private sewer is connected to us, then we would be able to provide treatment to that system. But currently the only service we don't have any service. We don't have enough flow to feed the bugs and do those types of things. So right now it's just clean water that's going through the plant to make sure everything stays active.
Thank you. Our consent agenda this month consists of item 19, approval of minutes, item 20, register of demands. Would anyone like to discuss either of these items today?
I was told to request my questions on the register of demands now so he can have it ready for Tuesday to answer. I just had one question. Brinks Incorporated, we paid them for September, October, November, and December on the register of demands in January. And 2 months were under $60 and 2 months were around $330. Can I get some clarification on the Brinks Incorporated contract and why we delayed paying for 4 months and why there's different monthly payments, please?
Yes, we can do that.
And then the only other thing, I saw that we have our answering service, $509. Is there a way we can maybe review with staff or have IT review how the answering service takes after hours emergency calls? Would that be possible?
How they take them out.
Yeah, because
they
they
route them?
if you call in after hours and you get the answering service and you're trying to report a water leak or you're trying to report something, it's extremely painful how long the answering service keeps you on the line and asks you, they want your account number, or they want all this personal data when you're
Gotcha.
just trying to report something. I want it easy if you see something to say something, right?
Mm.
Thank you.
And I've called before and it was real quick and easy. Okay.
We'll definitely look into that.
Moving on to item 21, director's reports. Anyone need to go today? Tuesday. Item 22, general manager report. We have the finance report and public affairs report.
We will do that on Tuesday.
Thank you.
But if there are any questions on the report, we'd be more than willing to take them now and make sure that we bring them back to you on Tuesday.
Any questions? Go ahead.
It's starting to feel kind of ridiculous. Can we get some clarification on the December billing when we talked about our delinquent and regular bills? our delinquent bills was higher than our regular. And I'm just curious, is that because it includes the running balance from when they became delinquent, or is that the delinquency only for the month of December? Because it's showing a pretty big difference in our delinquencies are higher than our regular bills. And I haven't seen that before. So if we could have a little discussion about that on Tuesday, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 23, district council comments.
Yes, just wanted to let you know that a couple times a year, there are meetings that are moved from Monday to Tuesday, and on Tuesdays I have council meetings. And so every year when those dates pop up and we move our meetings to Tuesday, somebody else from my office will cover it. So I'll have somebody else from my office here on Tuesday, and Mr. Cutworth will be back as well.
Thank you. Item 24, director comments and requests includes general comments, requests for future agenda items, and requests for future meetings. Director Martin?
No.
Director Meyerhoffen?
Yes, maybe it got delayed, but I think we talked about the theft of our water from contractors, and we were going to discuss that. Did that get put off to another month, or?
I do want to give a little update from Aqua for you. After our attendance at the Region 9 meeting at Aqua in Palm Desert, they created a special legislative subcommittee to create a bill to present to the state for water theft actions. And Marion, I believe, Director, Vice President Griffith, and myself attended that call. And our staff, I believe, sent some documentation and photographs of the water theft issues we were having to support that bill and it moving forward, just to give you a legislative update on that.
I appreciate that, Director Duff, and I hope we can still move forward with our plan. Thank you.
My question is there not a meeting tomorrow? Okay, is that also available by Zoom? It's only in Sacramento. And then tomorrow we have an Region 9 meeting. And the email that went out is we're getting bused there from here.
Correct. Little Molongo, why it is drivable. We had some concerns about people driving north and south on that, so we're going to have a parking lot and then bus them south, I believe.
Said the parking lot's here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's coming here and then bus.
All right. So what time do we meet?
9:30.
Okay.
That was your comment. General comments?
No.
All right. With that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.